The material and information contained within the Chatting with Cumberland podcast is for general information purposes only. You should not rely upon the material or information on the website as a basis for making any business, legal, or other decisions. While we endeavor to keep the content and resources of Chatting with Cumberland current and accurate, the Cumberland Board of County Commissioners, Administration, and all departments and affiliates make no representations or warranties of any kind, express or implied, about the completeness, accuracy, reliability, suitability, or availability with respect to services, show content, and guest opinions contained on the Chatting with Cumberland for any purpose. The views and opinions expressed on the show are not representative of that of county commissioners, administration, or employees unless expressly specified. The Chatting with Cumberland podcast will be discussing sensitive topics such as suicide, sexual abuse, drug use, mental health, and domestic violence. Viewer discretion is advised. Hi, everybody. This is Chatting with Cumberland. Beth Thomas?
Hey, Frank.
Hey! So we got to spend the last 40 minutes chatting with my brother here, Mr. John Fuqua. John, what's happening?
Another day in America, baby.
Another day in America.
Yeah.
We're going to sit down today and film the long-form content of John's testimony in terms of what's going on in his heart, what's going on in his community, right? Which is the good city of Bridgeton in Cumberland County.
Right.
Right? Shout out to the bridge.
I appreciate you sharing your story with us today.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for having me.
I mean, we're really excited about it. This is my favorite part of the show here, where we get to just sit and chop it up with a person in the community that's doing work like John. He's currently the president of the organization called Life Worth Living. It's a nonprofit organization that offers mentorship and gang prevention services and sports and community recreation here in the Great Cumberland County. And John is also a graduate of William Patterson and works currently at Complete Care doing community outreach. Sound about right, John?
Absolutely.
All right. And so what brings you in today, brother?
Well, listen, the opportunity to come chat with Cumberland is something that I couldn't resist. Unbelievable show. I think you guys are doing a great job.
Thanks,
it's community-based. It's focused on us, meaning members of the community here in Cumberland County, so it's a great thing, and I would be remiss not to attend. So,
Oh, man, we appreciate having you, man. For
listen,
sure.
it's an honor and a privilege to be here.
You know, I had to keep the seat warm, right?
Oh, yeah.
For you. So basically, John, just going back a few years and giving the readers and viewers some context, is I got to meet John while he was in a program called Steered Straight, where he was working with at-risk youth and educating them as part of a bigger program in school-based youth services. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. And I was really intrigued by his presentation, and I felt it was really heartfelt. And I think if it could impact me, it could impact a lot of others, as well. And I wanted to welcome him to the show today to talk a little bit about gang violence and what's going on in the community. John, where did it all start for you? Like, where did gang violence, the atmosphere, actually come from when you knew you were around gangs, and where did it start?
Well, especially here. Here, it started when we got the halfway house. Kentucky, Southwoods. So you're talking about 20 years ago. I'm 43. We started seeing an influx of gang activity 1998, 1997, 1996 here in Bridgeton. And it spread like wildfire.
Was it a predominant gang, or was it multiple gangs?
It was multiple gangs. You got to understand, we have our population is, I think, 60% Hispanic. So we have a lot of Latin Kings, Nietas, MS-13s, in the African-American community. We got Bloods, Crips. We have a lot of gang activity here. And a lot of times, at least early in the years of gang activity, we heard about it more because we had a local newspaper. We don't have that now. So daily incidents of violence and things that are taking place aren't really publicized. So unless you're in the know, you don't know. But we've seen it starting to spread more in our schools. I did a program for a long time at Bridgeton High School because the early onset of gang recruitment started in middle schools here in Bridgeton. I see kids wearing bandanas and their rosaries in middle school, man, in high school. I had a heartbreaking experience a couple years ago. It was the time the Bridgeton Relays was going on, and I was going to be going up to the Bridgeton Relays at probably like 4:30, 5 o'clock, and I happened to stop by Gateway, and it was a nice day outside, and I saw 3 high school seniors at the basketball court that I thought should have been up at the track running for the Bridgeton Relays, because the tradition here in Bridgeton, at least when I was growing up, was all of our best athletes ran track. That's how we had a track dynasty. I was a heck of a football player, basketball player. I wasn't anything. I wasn't the best runner, but I ran because that was a part of Bridgeton pride. So I see these 2 really good athletic kids out at the basketball court, and I go, why aren't you guys up at the track running for the Bridgeton Relays? And one of the kids was just wiping the sweat off his face with his shirt. He had on a school uniform, and when he lifted up his shirt, he had on a blue belt. And what I realized right away was that kid is currently a Crip. Little subtle things about what you're wearing, right? And I go, you ain't running track, bro? He's like, nah, we don't run track. We don't do none of that. And I'm like, what? And what happened for me, the alarm goes off, because this is the thing I tell parents all the time. When you start seeing your son or your daughter start to shy away from things that they love to do, i.e. participate in competitive sports, whether that's playing an instrument or being involved with maybe building their own computer or robots, you start seeing your child decline from participating in things that they love, they're replacing it with something else. Something else is going on. So when I saw those 2 young men, and they were seniors, and I said, they're not running, and I go, he's in the gang. A couple years later, the behaviors got worse. But what hit me more was their seniors that are looked up to. Who they going to school with? They share a school with the 11th graders. They share a school with the 10th graders. They share a school with the 9th graders. And some of those kids got younger siblings who are in middle school, who are in elementary school. So it's a trickle-down effect.
Right.
If our top athletes are not participating and now they're wearing blue belts because they're in gangs, what does that 10th or 9th grade kid want to do to aspire to be him?
What about the parents? Have you ever noticed that maybe some of the kids come from parents who are already in gangs?
Absolutely. That's one of the main problems. I tell people all the time, guys want to do what their mom loves. If my mom loving gang members, what you think I'm aspiring to be? I tell people all the time, you got a gangbanger living in your house. You're a mom. You got your boyfriend or a significant other. When he come in the house, he got to hide a gun. What you think your son watching? What you think your son paying attention to? Our kids know if you work. Our kids know if you're a stand-up guy or girl. They can see through the bull. Kids have an unbelievable sense of understanding. They know when somebody being real or fake. And it's not easy to hide. You can't BS a BSer. So a lot of times, a lot of gang stuff come from home. I can attest to it in my own family. A couple of years ago, I was heartbroken to see one of my sisters. She married. She was getting married. She had an engagement party, and I'll never forget going to her house, and the cake was on the counter, and the cake was red and black because the guy she was dating was a blood, and she was also in the gang. And I go, I can't be around this. And this is my own family. This is my sister. I said, I can't be around this. And I walked out. I didn't stay. I didn't participate.
Was that your only personal experience with
Nah,
gang
I have so
violence,
many
or?
more, man. But to see
I
my
know
little sister.
there's a few that
to see my you know what made me mad? To see my sister doing that, because we was raised different. I got 4 sisters and a brother. My mom had 6 kids, so we was taught from an early age that we ain't have to join no groups. We ain't have to go play with nobody else because y'all got yourselves. If you ever had any kind of problems, we leaned on each other. My sister and my brother wasn't under any pressure to join gangs or do drugs because people was coming at them. They actually seek those things. Those things weren't brought to them. They went to get them. People wasn't approaching them because they was John Fuqua's sisters or John Fuqua's brother. So they went to go get it. And that's what's scary. And when I saw that, if a person that could take the drilling that I'm gonna give you, because I'm gonna give it to you, I'm just gonna be screws in you.
What does that sound like?
Yeah.
You know, what is that drilling?
I mean,
sound
that
like?
drilling is, what are you doing? Are you an idiot? Like,
Right.
the only thing I wanted to make sure that no matter what, that anybody behind me with my last name wouldn't have to go through the things like fighting, wouldn't have to fight to say this is what I'm identifying myself as, because I did all of that for them. I was the kid that they said wasn't going to make it. I was the kid that they said was going to end up in jail or dead before 21 because up until the age of 14, I was fending for myself. I had a mom that did drugs almost 20 out of 24 hours a day. I lived in a rough neighborhood. I got 4 sisters. 3 of my sisters was pregnant before they was 15. So I was fending for myself, man. I had to defend my name. I had to create a name for myself. And for a long time, that was through negative actions. But I had to do what I had to do. That was the hand that was dealt to me at the time. It wasn't until I got into a big fight. I got into a huge fight. Funny story, guys older than me, I always hung with guys 3-4 years older than me. And but I was always the brains of the crew. And we got into this big fight. My good friend, that's doing 20 years, I'll never forget, he was in high school at the time. And I was in 7th grade, actually. We got into a big fight. And it was like the entire Bridgeton jumped me, man. Burlington Manor kids, kids from Maple Gardens. We had cliques at the time. We wasn't gangs, but we got our own cliques. The next day, my friends, who were high school students, met me at the middle school, and we waited on those kids to get off the bus, and we fought. We ended up in the auditorium that day. It was probably like 40 of us. And again, at the time, I was raising myself. They suspended us that day, and the school had realized at that point that my mom was so deep in her drug addiction, they could never get in touch with my mom.
What kind of drugs was she using?
She was smoking crack. This is the crack epidemic.
Right. I know it was what, like 80s, 90s?
Yeah, this is 90s. So 80s, late 80s, early 90s. I tell people all the time I had an unbelievable relationship with my mom behind her door. My mom didn't come out of her room. We always had this conversation through this crack at her bedroom door. So I wasn't in a rush to come home from school. Nobody was checking on me. My mom wasn't checking my homework. She didn't know if I went to school that day or I skipped. So I could do what I want. I come walking in the house. I'll never forget, I come walking to my apartment that day. It was like 6:30. And for me, the toughest part of my day, every day, was putting my key in my apartment door to come home. If my mom had a lot of money, she was downstairs smoking crack with her friends. They was smoking in the living room. So that smell of that crack cocaine hit that front door and it hit your nose. And mentally, it took me to a dark place where my mom didn't care. She chose drugs over us. So I'm keying into my apartment door that day. And like I kind of figured, if she had a lot of money, she was smoking crack downstairs. If she had a little money, she was smoking up in her room, and I wasn't going to see her regardless. But this day that big fight happened, I opened up my back door, and the crack cocaine hit my nose because she clearly was smoking downstairs earlier that day. But there's a figure sitting at my living room table, sitting there in a suit, and
I'm sorry, what?
There's a male figure.
Oh,
I
figure.
just see the back. I just see his back.
Like a silhouette?
A silhouette.
Sorry,
All I see
I
is
couldn't
the
hear
back.
you.
All I see is his back, right? And I'm like, who is this man sitting at my kitchen table? And who is this man sitting in here with all this crack smoking here? I mean, you got to be a genius to smell like something's weird in this house, right? So
What does that smell like?
it's
Just,
different.
it's
It's almost like sulfur and burning trash, man. It's authentic. It's something that you can never.
You can't get, once it gets in there, you
Once
can't
it
get
get
it
in
out.
there,
You
smell it
your
once.
brain goes there, right?
Yeah,
The
you
second,
smell it once, it's like, oh yeah.
You never forget
Can't
it.
nobody pull the wool over your eyes on that one.
Right,
So
right.
when I walk in, there's a man sitting at my living room at the dining room table, and it's God bless him, it's superintendent of school Tom Lane. Now, I walk in my house. I'm in 7th grade, and the superintendent is sitting at my house. It wasn't a vice principal.
Right.
It wasn't a social worker. It was the superintendent. Because 2 years prior to that, I was the first kid in Bridgeton School District to get anger management. I needed anger management, 5th grade. So they got me anger management. I'll never forget, Mr. Lane was there for that meeting. He talked about the importance of me focusing and listening. These guys are here to help me, right? I learned how to ask for help early. So I'm sitting in my living room, sitting in the dining room, and Mr. Lane is there. And he goes, he said to me that day, he said, it's time for you to make a decision for your life. He said, I see the living conditions you live in. He said, but these conditions shouldn't determine what you do with your life. He said, unless you decide that you want to do something different, he said, you're going to end up dead or in jail. And he said, I want something different for you, but you got to want it for yourself. He made a promise to me that day. He said, if I did everything right, he said, if I stayed on the right track, anytime I needed something, I could call him and he would help. And that day, that was the first time I heard that from a man. And I was 12, 13 years old. The first male ever in my life told me to ask for help and I'll be there. I never got that promise from a man before. Wow. So he said that to me, and those words, I took them. And I said, wow, that's the guy that's in charge of all the schools. And he at my house.
He could have sent 100 other people.
He could have sent a million different people, bro. But
shout out to Tom. Tom, if you're listening, man.
And that's why, Frank, one of the reasons why I'm the way I am now, it was from direct contact with Mr. Lane.
Right.
I had direct contact with the superintendent. I had access to his office. That was real. Yeah. What that showed me at an early age was access was important.
Sure.
It wasn't about it wasn't about what you know, it's about who you know. And in order to get the resources and the help that you need. So I didn't have to go through a bunch of red tape. I got that message from him. It was probably the most impactful thing that happened in my life, at least up to that point. And I'm sitting there that day and I'm thinking, man, I got to do something different. We had a parent-teacher conference. Like 2 days later, my mom and my grandmom went. And this might make me break down crying, but I sat in the office that day with my mom, my grandmom, and we had a counselor come in. And I told my mother that day for the first time ever, I said, you on drugs. You up here at the school telling me to get my behavior together. I said, but your behavior is the worst. You on drugs. And you doing drugs hurt us. Hurt me and my siblings. I told her that day, I said, I'm going to move out and move with my grandma. Because while I live with my mom, I could do what I want. After speaking to Mr. Lane, I know I needed some structure. I moved in with my grandmother. My grandmother lived in a one-bedroom apartment out in Amity Heights. And I took the floor. Even though I had my own room in 31 and 199, I slept on the living room floor. My grandmother gave me two blankets and 2 pillows. And I made that my room for 2 years until my mom went to rehab and got off drugs. But it took for me to get in that fight, to have that meeting with those teachers, to see a room with my anger management coach, school social worker, assistant superintendent, principal, my mom, my grandmom. I'm looking around that room and I'm going, all of them in here for me. Now what if I use all of them?
Tell it, brother.
Right? Like,
it's real stuff right here.
Like,
I'm actually impressed that at such a young age you made such an adult decision.
Yeah.
It's a big one, man.
And it sounds like you helped your mom get into a rehab.
Yeah, it was. You know what? It was. Everything came full circle. Cause I go, what if I do this? Like, what if I give myself my best chance right now, right? And I took it. I'll never forget, man. I tell kids all the time, I used to be that kid that get in trouble and I used to pray to every god under the sun. Buddha, Allah.
Right down the list, did you?
Oh, man, whoever
listen.
wants to respond, please help me get out of trouble, right? And when my mom went to rehab a year later, every night before I laid down on that floor of my grandma's house, I said the same prayer. It was a Cosby time where I wish I had a Cosby family, man, but I didn't have that, right? And every night I said the same prayer for a year, that my mom would come home from that rehab and she would have her life together, man.
I think as professionals, we forget that. Like, we forget that young boy crying for help,
yeah,
even though we
man.
don't hear it.
Oh yeah.
You know, they're getting into fights and they're really just saying, help me.
Yeah, that's what I was doing. That's what I was doing every day. But I just didn't know how to say I need help.
Right.
That day when Tom Lane, who changed my life, when he said, I will help you, it gave me permission to ask for help, because for so long in my community and my family, we was taught that asking for help was a sign of weakness, right? You handle your own business.
Right.
How do you handle your own business when you're 10 years old? You still need to be nurtured, right? You still need support.
Right.
Unfortunately, for a lot of us in the African American community, I can't say everybody, a lot of our parents don't see a maturity level or age as the time that you've ascended to a certain position, as far as your maturity level, or you 19, 20, you ready to handle certain things. They start looking at your size. So if you 5'9" and you 14 and you go black, he good. No, he ain't. He
Like The
still
Blind
wet behind
Side.
the ears.
Remember the Blind Side movie?
Yeah.
They thought he could do
because
everything.
Because of your size, they think he can handle that. No, I still got teenage issues. I still got adolescent issues. So, again, it's funny that we're having this conversation, but for me, it was trouble that sparked everything. But inside of that trouble, I got mental health help, right? I got community support. I got a support inside of my church. I got support in my community.
It sounds like everybody wrapped around you.
Everything came full circle, Frank, and that's why my mission at Life Worth Living is to give troubled youth, or somebody that's out of bounds or lost their wits or lost their way, give them the same compass that was given to me.
It's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Mr. Lane served as a lighthouse.
Right.
All the people around me put a compass in my hand and helped me find my way. And that's what I want to give to everybody that come my way. And those answers might not come overnight. For me, a lot of stuff that I learned that day started hitting me later on down the road. But what I needed that day, I got it that day.
Yeah.
And I tell people all the time, my favorite superhero is a superhero with no superpower, Batman. He got a utility belt. But on that, he got different gadgets on that belt that could help him save a life. But he might not use every gadget at the same time, but it's there just in case. So I want to give out gadgets, man. And those gadgets come in the form of resources.
Right.
So I want you to get a utility belt, and I want to put every resource possible on that belt for you.
Yeah, and that's what Chatting with Cumberland is all about, is connecting with community, folks like yourself that are doing frontline work, but then at the same time that can relate with the topic that we're talking about personally. You know, you had a lot of courage to share that personal story, and it came from a real place, you know, and that to me is very impactful. That was something I did not know about your background, and today I'm better for it, because I can understand and be a bit of an empath and understand that same thing. Now, my situation was a little different. You know, my parents had an addiction also. Unfortunately, it was gambling. That was theirs. They never touch drugs, but they liked to gamble a lot. And the thing about that is, you talked about stigma and contact and communication, and the things that when you're in the middle of a certain scenario, perhaps a domestic violence and addiction scenario, I mean, there's a million of them, and that's normal to you and normal to those in your family, you don't think it to be abnormal. You can't identify that blind side, you know? And I just remember nights in the casino where my parents really wrapped around me. They took care of me a lot. They were really good to me in a lot of ways, but they liked to gamble, you know? And I would be out there in the casino waiting for them while they were on the floor, and I couldn't go past the line. And, you know, I'd get these extravagant dinners or room service, you know, but they were never there.
Wow.
When we were doing that. And to me, it felt right at the time, but looking back as I'm older and wiser with my aged eyes, you know, and having children myself, I understand that was trauma, and I think we all kind of hold some in from time to time. And Chatting with Cumberland is just about expressing that, and like you said, contact and communication, right? To share those deeper experiences that people can actually relate to without having a fear of stigma or any misunderstandings, you know?
Absolutely.
You know, I do wonder about the children who have a home life different from what they see at school or maybe at a friend's home. Like, do you think that they feel like they're in two different people? I guess because we go to school and we're taught certain things. You don't do this and you don't do that, and this is not good and that's not good. And then you go home and you might be seeing it. You might be actually living it.
Yeah.
And
It's a dichotomy. It can be confusing as a young kid, I'd imagine.
And I would imagine that those children don't realize how strong they are, that they even survive that.
Yeah, and I think that shout out also to the administrators and the teachers in our education systems. I remember some of my hardest times. I latched on to a lot of the teachers that are still friends, mine and colleagues and mentors to this day. And they taught me a lot, and because they were in a lot of contact, like you said, with the kids. Now, tell me how COVID is changed the environment. Would you say that the gang environment and what you're seeing with some of the kids now, they can't go outside as much?
It's one of the things that COVID did too. It's released a lot of guys from jail, man.
Right.
So we got people that should still be in jail that's home.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing, man? I'm conflicted about that, to be honest.
To be honest with you, in my opinion, for the betterment of the community, it's a bad thing.
It's a bad thing.
For instance, I firmly believe if you commit a crime, you go serve your debt to society and you can come home redeemed, right? But what if your sentence was reduced because of COVID?
Are you at that point where
Are you at a redemption point? Have you served your time? No. The judge gave you X amount of time. You got out early because of a loophole. Especially for some of these young people that are not really ready to come home. The other day I just saw two gang members that were sentenced to jail for killing people out.
I thought they weren't supposed to let out anyone who committed murder.
Yeah, that's what they said. They weren't supposed to, but they did, right? That's scary to me. You already got a short sentence. Now we're going to abbreviate it even more. So it's kind of scary. Because now what that ends up doing is what? That creates this new narrative where they're telling these kids, oh, man, you can go do this and you'll be home in 5 years, man.
They kind of use that to their advantage in recruitment.
Listen, I talked to the prosecutor a while ago in an offbeat conversation because I'm talking to some guys that are in the county jail, and they're up there with not written literature, but the story of how to beat a murder. These are the conversations that our criminals are having. I
say that penitentiary or the prisons is like college.
Well, it is,
It's
man.
college for criminals.
I got guys, I'm talking to guys, oh, man, I'm good. My cellmate, he did X, Y, Z. Oh, yeah, I got the same case, the statute, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
They reading it off like they Johnny Cochran or something. And I'm going, what? And then he goes, go watch when I go to court. And I'm going, what? I go to court and I see this guy, he goes, blah, 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 blah. Oh, we're going to throw it out. So
if they invested half of their time into something productive and legal, they'd be lawyers.
Would run the world. They would run the world, man. I'm telling you, and a lot of these guys and girls that are affiliated or join gangs, join for protection. And when they're ready to get out, when they're ready to walk away, they're going to go through some stuff to get out, but they can't get out.
I've seen that more and more. It didn't always used to be that way, right?
It's up to them. But you got to want it. You got to want it, and it ain't no in between. You can't straddle the fence. It's either you all the way in or you all the way out.
All right.
Yeah.
No halfway banging. Right?
Nah.
That's what they say.
I mean, with COVID, our gangs, again, our gang culture is different. With COVID, I'm laughing saying this. With COVID, our gangs came together.
Yeah, it takes a pandemic, but
they united.
How so?
Because they're not staying home.
They come in, they working together, man. Now they're intertwined.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got gangs that are now intertwined, man.
Yeah. And I tell you, COVID has done a lot, but I think that in a weird way, it has brought a lot of people together, not just, but virtually. But I'll be honest, I look forward to getting out of the office to do this segment with, human, like actual human people, as opposed to most of the majority of the work being done virtually. And I'm sure you guys can relate, but I know, kind of going back to your personal experience with gangs, you had a traumatic incident involving your dear mom. Tell us a little bit about that. It was the story that kind of brought my attention to you that you shared, and tell us what happened.
Well, it's crazy. I get a call 2006. At the time, my nephew had been in and out of trouble. He eventually would join the gang. I was living in Jersey City at the time. He was telling me he wanted to come live with me in Jersey City. And at the time, Jersey City gang problem was worse than South Jersey, Bridgeton at least. But I knew the Bridgeton culture because I'm from here. Jersey City had more unknowns. And he was saying to me that he wanted to come move with me to get away from here. And instead of letting him come move with me, I decided that I was being selfish at the time. Actually, the first year I just was like, no. Man, I'm living in Jersey City. I got a New York skyline view from my window, from my apartment. I get on a train. I'm in Midtown Manhattan in 8 minutes. I don't got no kids. I'm only thinking about myself at the time. He called me again the following year. And he said, Uncle John, I want to come move with you to Jersey City because the gang problem starting to get too much for me in Bridgeton. And this time I listened. I figured my nephew called me 2 years in a row. Something must be going on. I packed up my bags. I was teaching at the time in Jersey City. At the end of the school year, I packed up my bags June 2007, and I came back home. I was coming here because I had a feeling that my nephew was going to kill somebody, or somebody was going to kill him. He had gotten into so much trouble. The last incident that he got in landed him in Cumberland County Juvenile Detention Center.
Like what type of trouble we talking?
Him and his 3 friends jumped a 40-something-year-old man and beat him within inches of his life. So they got charged with attempted murder. Here's a kid who at 10, 11 was already fighting. He was big for his age, loved putting his hands on other people. Now he's sitting in the juvenile detention center facing attempted murder. Go to that. I'll never forget coming here, going to that hearing. And when I got there, I was gravely disturbed about my nephew's behavior. The 40-something-year-old victim came in with a patch on his eye. He had lost his eye. He was able to identify the kid that hit him. One of the kids hit him with a stick. A branch went through that man's left eye. He lost his eye, right? He was able to identify the kid with that stick. That kid ended up getting sentenced for attempted murder.
He identified him with one eye?
Yeah. I was able to identify him, right?
That's a feat in itself. Yeah.
That man was able to identify that kid in with a testimony from other witnesses, right? So that kid get in trouble.
That might be a hell of an argument in court.
Yeah, well, but the worst thing that happened that day was my nephew was completely exonerated. So what ended up happening was he got more stain. Mm-hmm. That made him feel a little bit more invincible, right? So his trajectory was perfect for destruction. Right. But what I would see here was he was a kid that was a leader. So every time you saw him, you saw 4 or 5 other kids around him. And what I realized that the voice of my higher, the God that I believe in, told me that it was bigger than just my nephew. It was my whole community. Because when I got here in June of 2007, we didn't even have summer league basketball no more. And people don't even know that's why I jumped neck first into basketball, because that was the thing that helped save my life and the life of all my friends. We had a free summer basketball program at Southeast Gateway. Because our parents was on drugs, we didn't need parents to sign us up. We could go right in. The guy that ran a recreation program, Matthew Wright, knew all of us. We was all honest enough with each other. We didn't want to pretend that we were any older or any younger than we were. We wanted to play against the kids that we could play against because we were competitive, right? And when I came back here in June 2007, my nephew was a good athlete, and the first thing I asked him when he was coming home, because he was at the detention center, he got exonerated from that charge, I go, I'm going to take you down to Gateway and sign you up for summer basketball. And he was like, ain't no summer basketball. And I'm blown away. I'm going, what? I said, that league been around for 40 years, man. That's where you go. You're going to go sit down. You're going to sit down next to Matt. You're going to be there 3 days a week like I was. I'm going to make sure he give you a summer job. We're going to get you out of the Ville. And when I went down there, they had the sign-up sheet for the summer basketball, and it was 2 kids' names on the list, man.
Yeah, brutal.
And by that time in June every year, that list would be full. The waiting list would be there traditionally. So I gave my nephew, God bless him, I gave my nephew and 2 of his friends a task. I said, tomorrow I'll give y'all $5 if all y'all come with 2 more people to sign up. And so forth and so on. In a week we had 75 kids.
So the need was there.
The need was there, man.
They didn't know. They know.
Again, because, Frank, we talk about anti-gang or gang prevention. You got to offer them something.
Sure.
If it's idle, if nothing's going on, idle time is a devil's playground, right?
That's what they say.
Idle time, I'm going to go for whatever's being offered.
Right.
And the gang is happy to get, if I shoot my shot at all 3 of us, and because there's other things set up like basketball, double dutch, a video game league or whatever, they might get 1 of us. They happy with 33.3%. That's a hell of a recruitment. 1 out of 3 ain't bad. But if ain't nothing going on, it's a good chance I'm gonna get 2 out of 3. And 66% is even better. So when you look at 2007, 2008, 2009, it was little to nothing, no activities going on. Once our kids age out of Major League Football, and at Bridgeton at 14, ain't nothing for nobody offering you no recreation after 14. Cause he big, he good. Right. No, he ain't. There's still recreation going on in Cherry Hill. Still recreation going on in Toms River, but not none here, right? So we do the basketball thing. My nephew was in football, man, he loving it. That ends his high school football season. So what we do is, it was a time where it was a battle, man. It was a battle for their lives. So the high school football team can only keep a certain amount of kids. The soccer team can only keep a certain amount of kids. Remember, we live in a district with more than 6,000 school-age kids, right? So those ones that were interested in playing something but did not make the cut, what are we doing with them? Those kids wanted to do something. Not only did they want to do something, they needed to do something. Because if we don't give them this, they're going to go over there, right? My nephew and his friends found themselves on the outside looking in because the year before they wasn't doing their work in school. So now you don't got the grades. You're not eligible for fall sports. What happens in the fall? It get darker early. We're going back to mental health here. Now it's getting dark at 6 o'clock. All you doing is going to school and coming back home. You home 2:30. Now from 2:30 time to go to bed, you're supposed to be occupied. What's going to occupy your time in Bridgeton Village?
Especially if you don't want to go home and turn that key in the lock.
What's occupying your time?
I think now more so virtual interaction, game playing. And that's what kind of going back to what we were saying before was, you know, the Youth Services Commission of Cumberland County really thought ahead this year with funding 3 new school programs in Millville, Vineland, and also Bridgeton, but at the same time funding a separate recreation program. And one of those components can be an esports league. Yeah. You know, and we're basically, what I'm trying to have the commission do is start at where people are and then work backwards, you know, and that's a philosophy that kind of linked us together in terms of what you're doing with Life Worth Living right now, providing this recreation. And at the same time, other credible messengers like yourself that are doing the frontline work, which I'm trying to bring a spotlight to them, and that's what Chatting with Cumberland is about. But getting back to your story now, so getting into some trouble. It's tough to tell with the mask. So Rakeem's getting into some trouble. You're kind of teeter-tottering back and forth, kind of dealing with it, knowing what he's getting into. And one day it all kind of comes to a head, right?
Well, even before that, Frank, you got to understand this too. Like, battle is the battle of a lot of people, right? You got mom on one side. I love my sister to death. She was she created a codependent relationship. She coddled him. So she supported his negative behavior, didn't really call him out on it. On the flip side.
Now what is, for those listening, codependent behavior? What does that mean? That
means that you're creating it out. Like you got a kid on drugs, you started giving him money. Knock it off. You know what he's doing with that money. Let's not do that. Or, like in the instance of my sister, there was a time, I'll never forget, my nephew was fighting in front of my uncle's house. My uncle picked up the phone, called my sister. Your son is out here fighting. My sister go, that ain't him. He wasn't over there. And my uncle goes, niece, I know what my great nephew looked like. I'm looking right at him. He said, not only that, I went out there and I grabbed him and walked him up to my porch. Oh, that wasn't him.
She covered for him a lot, probably.
That's why I tell you why I could say to you and anybody else, First thing you gotta do is be honest about the situation,
Right.
because we weren't honest about my nephew. And the end result was he lost his life. If the adults around him were honest about what if all of us was honest, not just me, because he still got a mom and a dad. And no matter what I say, the parents got more power than me. They could supersede anything I say, because they are his legal guardians, right? And that's what happened with my nephew. My sister had gave me custody, but she wanted him to get waived up as an adult for that attempted murder charge. He got out of jail. And on the night of December 24th, 2008, there was a fight going on in Bristolville's apartment complex. The kid that Rakeem was fighting, he had been in a couple fights with him before. They had a history of violence with each other, but they was also friends. He was a rapper. Said this kid named in probably 5 or 6 of his rap songs. Mm-hmm. He was one of his best friends. And what that kid needed was some conflict resolution. And that's what we do too at Life Worth Living. That's probably the biggest thing I do every day.
In an environment that they feel comfortable where
right,
they can be honest, right?
Yes.
But you're also working against the culture.
Yeah.
Because my understanding is from talking to certain parents. I remember one in particular, she went to jail, fought with a neighbor or something and went to jail. And I was like, why would you fight with your neighbor? Why not walk away? And she's like, it's a pride issue. And in my mind, I grew up thinking, I don't want to go to jail. I'd rather walk away from a fight. And she was absolutely not, because it was her reputation in her community.
And not only that,
you
don't want this person to feel like they could do that to you again. So one of the things that we learned in our community
you, right? Don't let them punk you, right?
Yeah, you ain't punking me.
See, now we always fought with our mouths, like verbal.
I'm going to let you, I ain't about to let you get this because you're going to try it again.
Right.
So we want to eliminate that.
But that's what the kids are learning, so you have to teach them a different way than fighting.
Exactly. But then also there's those same parents are having conversations with their kids about being tattletales.
Oh.
You're a tattletale. Who made that up? So now when this kid, 15, 16, he a snitch. Y'all came up with tattletale. We even had parents, don't tattletale. You hear parents telling, why you tattletale? Because the kid tell everything. Now you done condition this kid not to tell at an early age. So that happens too.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, but my nephew, that night, it was a fight going on. Him and this kid had been in it before. There was enough adults out there that could have helped change it that night, but negativity sells, right?
Yeah, too busy watching the show.
See a fight started between the kid that my nephew was fighting with before and one of my family members. It was all my family. And my nephew jumped in a fight that he had nothing to do with, man. And while they was jumping this kid, the kid was trying to get an object out of his pocket. The object was a .38 caliber handgun. And when that kid was able to successfully get that gun out of his pocket, he squeezed the trigger 3 times. 2 of those 3 bullets found the body of my nephew. Ran the length of maybe 3 football fields before he collapsed in the back of Quarter Mile Lane School. And again, everybody in my family got that call while rushing to the scene of my nephew getting shot. My mother had a massive heart attack. At that point, my mom had been clean and sober from drugs for 20 years. But she suffered from a heart condition.
Sure.
So she lost her life. My nephew would lose his life 6 hours later. I would bury my mom on December the 30th, 2008. And I would bury my nephew on his 18th birthday on December 31st, 2008. On December the 31st, 2008, my girlfriend gave birth to his first child. He never got a chance to see his son. His son, 12 years old now. He had an unbelievable football game yesterday up at the park. He's currently being raised by my other nephew, Doc. He's doing a heck of a job with Stubbs Jr. So my family's forever changed.
You lost 2 special people.
I lost 2 people in one night. And my loss is nothing compared to my sister. My sister lost her mom and she lost her son. For the 6 years that I went to therapy, it took a year or 2 for my sister to understand that she needed the same therapy. But she did come to me the following month and say she needed help with that. So me and my wife took him in.
Is that where it all started?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I raised my nephew. My nephew was my introduction to adulthood, I say. My nephew was my introduction to being responsible for somebody other than myself, I say. And I had to become that everyday example. And that changed my life forever. I look at him now and he's a father, and I'm so proud of him. He used the loss of his brother to energize his everyday living. Him and his friends are a group of young men that want to do something different in the way Rock lost his life. So we took a loss and we turned it into a triumph. And that's what we're doing now. We want his son to know that he can have a better life than his dad. His dad's life is a tragic story, but it's also a point of reference. It's an example how things can go terribly wrong if you make bad choices. And it's a teachable moment. Do I wish he would have made different choices? Absolutely. But we live with what we got. And this is what he had. His life going to always be remembered because we're going to always tell his story. And even though it's a cautionary tale, it's still a tale. He was a son. He was a brother. He was a friend. He was a cousin. He was a person. But at some point, he took a wrong turn. And what I'm telling young people now is it ain't too late to turn around. He wanted to turn around. He just didn't have the opportunity. That gun in the hand of that young man made that decision for him. But life started spiraling out of control before that night.
So is it guns that are the problem?
No.
Is it legislation? Is it
no, it's irresponsible people with guns, because I know people that got 10, 12 guns and they never killed a person. It's about the people that's getting guns irresponsibly. And that's another thing that we talk about, what we can do to oppose illegal gun use. Encourage people to get legal firearms.
Right.
Encourage our kids to learn how to shoot. We live in Cumberland County where we have a vast amount of people that hunt. I got neighbors. My neighbors' kids opening their first guns at 10, 11, 12 years old. 22s, they're going to shoot rabbits. So they're opening their guns. They're brand new. Their parents ordered them offline, or they're getting them from Dick's or Walmart or wherever online. And kids in the projects like I grew up in getting their first gun out of a book bag that probably got 3 or 4 bodies on it.
Right.
And they got to hide their gun. They don't got no license to go in the woods to shoot. They ain't going to nobody's range. It's all illegal. The gun probably ain't been cleaned in years. So we gotta change that. So what we gotta do is start promoting the idea of legal firearms. Start promoting the idea of learning how to hunt.
And I understand, John, this is the thing that kind of most concerned me as I watched one of my favorite outlets of media, Vice News. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
Absolutely.
They're great. They do a lot of coverage on real life issues, and it's not slanted in any direction. It's just, hey, here it is. This is what it is.
Yeah, and you decide.
Yeah, and you decide for yourself, right? Good old fashioned media, the way it should be, right? Like they just give you the facts, and you determine wherever you land, on either side of the fence or in the middle, whatever. But they did a special on gangs and some of the trades that they use and how they're doing them this time and age. And I noticed that gun trafficking is a major source of revenue for a lot of criminal organizations, including gangs. Additionally, narcotics trafficking is another one. But what I realized, they have other facets of violence. Kidnapping is holding hostages for ransom. Obviously big burglaries or robberies. There's a lot of different facets that kind of come along with the gang life that bring in their income. And the thing that concerned me the most is my son, he's 11 years old, technologically savvy. Like, our generation was the invention of internet, from dial-up to chat rooms, and now his generation is like the evolution of mobile devices, computers. And what's happening is gangs per se, and tell me if you agree, from what I understand, is gangs aren't really on the corners as much anymore. Everything's done via dark web. The narcotic sales are done online through, social media, where they leave a drop, and you pay with an anonymous currency called Bitcoin, and you don't even see the dealer anymore. The same thing goes for guns. They have an illegal ghost gun market where, you have countries like the Philippines making almost perfect replicas of guns with no serial numbers. They're called ghost guns, and they're cheaper than the real thing. You know, and these are what the crime families and the gangs are using to facilitate illegal trade. Do you see that happening here locally? Or
Oh man, it's heavy.
it's nuts, right?
It's crazy, man. Let me tell you something, Frank. Well, we gotta put into context here too. You can talk to local police. Bridgeton was a agriculture city,
Right.
Where families would travel here seasonal. Like the Fuquas, my family is originally from Alexandria, Louisiana. We moved to Belgrade, Florida, and we started working up the East Coast seasonally for summers, right? For crop. My grandfather would start in Belgrade, Florida, he would go up to Dublin, Georgia, and then the next stop would be Bridgeton, New Jersey for the blueberry fields in Hamilton, the cucumber fields in Cedarville. So we lived from New Jersey to Florida and everywhere in between, right?
Migrant farm work.
Migrant farm workers, African Americans. We were the original, right? So that's what my family did. So it wasn't a surprise that my grandfather had kids in Florida, kids in Georgia, and kids in New Jersey, right? So our families, my family still live in Florida, Georgia, and New Jersey. Cumberland County got so many ties to the southern part of America that it don't make no sense. I'm saying all that to say this. That's where some of the cheapest guns coming from, bro. I was in North Carolina 2 months ago, and you can get an AK-47 right now for $250 in North Carolina. You can get a 9mm for $100. So these brothers can take a quick 6-hour ride to see their auntie.
Yeah.
And come back with a bag full of guns. They go down there with $2,000 and come back with a bag full of guns.
Are they buying them off the street, or are they buying them through like loopholes, like legal loopholes?
They getting them off the street.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
They getting them off the dark web. They getting them out of the local Walmart. You got to understand, especially in North and South Carolina, you get a gun license, you get a weapon with a driver's license, bro.
Yeah.
It ain't even no background check. And they don't know I'm buying that gun in North or South Carolina, and I'm about to bring it back to Bridgeton, New Jersey.
Yeah, how would they?
They wouldn't know. Now I can go down there and buy a 9mm for $200 and come back up here and sell it for $300.
Yeah, but they're not asking either.
Nah, they don't care.
Because I don't think they care.
Because why? We live in a capitalistic society. Everybody want to capitalize. Everybody want to get a net gain, especially in the business world.
Yeah.
And don't forget human trafficking, too. That's a big piece of what you were saying earlier. Drugs, guns.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's all part of it.
I know there's certain loopholes, but from the eyes of just the Second Amendment perspective, right, and keeping everything legal and fair, the brokers that are selling the guns are not violating any laws. It's the people that are buying them that are violating the laws, right? So I don't think that it's really with exception to certain situations. If you're obviously showing signs that you're going to harm yourself with the gun or harm another person, that's why they have like cool down laws where if you go in to buy a gun, you can't pick it up for 3 or 5 or 7 days after you make the purchase to let anything that may be eminently, disrupting your life and, for you to take action on it. They make it a cool down period, which I think is good. I think that really though, the founding fathers, they were some really smart guys, and I would say that they thought of a lot of things ahead of time. And really, even though people may have certain perceptions on topics such as guns or abortion or whatever, the fundamental right remains the same. We have as humans and as Americans, we have the rights to life, liberty, and property. Those 3 things, right? Those are guaranteed rights to us. And I think upon upholding the Second Amendment, right, where as long as the seller's doing everything they're supposed to do and taking good faith chances in terms of making sure people aren't going to harm somebody, with any legal perception and any reasonable perception. It's unfortunate, but at the same time, we can't stop people's right to buy guns because it's an amendment that we're entitled to that protects us as citizens. So I kind of see both sides of the fence, but I think that in the long run, the gangs themselves have capitalized on loopholes that should be closed. The gun show loopholes being one of them in certain states. But if they're doing everything that they're supposed to do, purchasing legally, what obligation do the gun owners or the gun sellers have to beyond that? You know, what's the moral implication?
I'm thinking we could probably debate this conversation.
Yeah. But you know what, though, to
for
be
a long
honest with
time.
you, like, in my opinion, it's just my opinion, like, why don't we talk about these amendments and rights in school? Why aren't we educating these kids? Why aren't we saying to our kids as early as they can find or comprehend, why aren't we talking to them about the importance of the Second Amendment?
I think
not bearing arms
yeah.
illegally. Why
I
don't
think
we
you
talk
hit on it
about-
before. I think that the stigma, number one, the environment's not right to have those conversations. Maybe parents aren't equipped. I believe the same thing you do. We should, I'm very upfront with my children. I tell them exactly how it is. If they have questions, I just make it a very matter-of-fact type of situation, and we talk about it.
Like, you gotta understand, like, we living in a time right now, if it wasn't for COVID this year, I know at least in our district, our kids, and across the state of New Jersey, we're gonna be taught, we're gonna have a LGBT curriculum.
Huge.
Implemented in schools.
Right.
But we're yet to have a curriculum on our rights.
On guns, rights.
On gun violence.
Being,
We've been losing, like, again, my nephew got murdered. The man that murdered my nephew 5 years later murdered somebody else. He's currently in prison 40 years for murdering a woman that was pregnant. You understand?
Weesh.
Outside of being murdered 2008, here in Bridgeton alone, we have buried 17 young men under the age of 22. And we don't talk about it. Only time it's talked about is on their birthday, on their death day, and by their family. We aren't using any of these teachable moments to bring in a curriculum. But again, we're going to bring in a curriculum about LGBTQ across the state. But we ain't going to talk about to our kids about gun laws or their First, Second, Third, Fourth Amendment rights. We barely touch that in school. So we got to start figuring out what's more important, because these are the things that are going to be picked up either negatively or positively.
Yeah.
Why aren't we giving them the positive spin on it and saying these are the parameters and this is what you need to stay inside of, because you don't want to get an illegal firearm charge because you won't be able to work in a job to do background checks. You don't want to do this right here because you don't want to jeopardize your future. You might go to jail. We're not having those conversations now. Those conversations are being had in certain homes in our community, but not all of them. So as we're talking right now, in certain sections of the city of Bridgeton, there's a kid today that's learning how to use a gun, an illegal gun, the wrong way by somebody that had this illegal gun for a long time. At the same time, up by where I live in Upper Deerfield, there's a kid, because the kid's out of school by now, that's probably being taught, right now, laying out their gear to go hunting tomorrow.
So
Because it's hunting season.
my son just got his hunting license.
See?
There you go.
There's a kid that got hunting license.
Had to have practices.
How old
had
is
to be
he?
taught. He's 18 now.
And
But he
there's
got
an
it at 17.
And I know an 18-year-old that just got caught with a legal gun leaving Bridgeton Park. He in Atlantic County Detention Center.
Right. I think you're right, John. I think it would save a lot of lives. I think it would be good for the community. And I think it would be a very practical approach. I mean, many other nations outside the United States do this, and they have significantly lower. But I think one other thing that we should really add to that, maybe kind of couple it all together, would be how to interact with law enforcement.
Exactly, man. Let me tell you, and I say this, and I say it proudly. I love the Cumberland County PALs, all three municipalities,
organization,
Bridgeton, Vineland, Millville. I've had the pleasure and the opportunity to work with the area PALs since 2011. Talk about 9 years I've been a partner with Police Athletic League, and the way that those officers serve under unbelievable chiefs. Let's be clear, the three chiefs of our municipalities, and the way that they support the PALs, the way that the PALs support the community, whether it's through recreation, whether it's through fishing, skating. We've had demonstrations of cops coming in to talk to the kids about how to act during a routine traffic stop.
Officer Rick Cott.
Rick Cott is awesome.
Shout out to Rick, man. He's
Jody
great.
Farabella, Chief Gamara, Josh Thompson, Kirsten Lowe. These guys are unbelievable Jamira Roman, unbelievable officers. And we have a opportunity, I believe, right now with so much going on with law enforcement in the community, where we are at a point right now where we can create a better relationship. And that's been happening with our area pals for the last 8 years. I can attest to it. I've been there. I've seen these guys come get some of the most hardened kids. And we might have a kid, like we had a kid get shot. The PAL officers was at Cooper's Hospital before me.
Wow.
It was at Cooper's before me. Because they've identified these kids as their kids. They want to know the kids. They want to help them. They want to lead them to the right direction. So I think a lot of stuff is coming full circle here in Cumberland County. I don't think we have that much far to go. We've been counted out for so long. We have a lot of great people, a lot of great organizations. I think we got a lot of new blood, a lot of new energy. We're starting to see some of the old people get out of the way and let the people that want to do the work and put them in position to actually do the work. And I think that's how we're going to get to where we want to go. And we talk about it all the time. It ain't going to be overnight. We didn't get here overnight, so we're not going to get out of here overnight. It's going to be an arduous task, but we got to do the work. And the work begins with the first step. As long as we continue to take steps forward, we'll be fine.
Sure. And you know, what I wanted to ask you also, that just from my own perception anecdotally, is the presence of a father figure. You know, I know you mentioned your mother and how close you were to her and helped her through her addiction, and how, you know, unfortunately she passed away the same time that, you know, your nephew did. So where was your dad during all this?
My dad was on the other side of town. My
Were you
dad
close
lived
with
on
him?
the other side of town with another family. I had 4 brothers in another house that he raised. I was the product of an affair. So I didn't have that relationship with my dad. It took my mother to die. My mom died in 2008. Me and my father, I was 32. Me and my dad went to lunch, I think a week after my mom's funeral. I treated him to lunch. And I'll never forget telling him that day, I said to him, I just want to know the rest of my family. I don't got nothing bad to say about you. I can't imagine what your life was like, but I know that I made it. Despite of you, I'm here. I'm pretty successful. And it was hard, man. I had days where I'd be at football practice, and I tell y'all, no lie, I can't forget this. We would be lining up for drills, and I was saying to myself, because your dad was there at practice telling you what to do, and I was better than you. I'm saying when he come, I'm going to hit him even harder because he got his dad. I'm telling myself that at practice, man.
Kind of gassing yourself up
Word.
and just letting out some of that aggression.
Oh, your dad showing you?
Yeah.
I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you, and I don't got no dad.
That's real. Yeah.
I was saying that to myself, but I had a good friend that lived on Colfax Street in the house. They had a yard. I grew up in the projects. We ain't had no yard. Something got broken in our apartment. You fill out a form for the maintenance man to come fix it. No man ever put a wrench in my hand to teach me how to do little stuff around the house. So I started going to my friend's house who had a mom and a dad that lived in the house. They had a yard. They taught me how to cut grass. His dad gave me my first maintenance belt to do a little work. I had my quarter wrench, screwdriver, hammer, nails.
You got gassed up.
Oh, I was hyped. But Frank, I was 14.
Yeah.
But I got it then. And my mom, when she got sober, she met a good man that came in my life at the age of 15, and he taught me everything from how to tie a tie, from the importance of going to work, how to manage money, everything. I got it late, but I did get it.
Yeah, man. And congratulations to you. And
thank you.
Thank you for all the great work that you and your organization do in the community. And it's been a real pleasure to sit and get to chop it up with you a little bit in a real way. You know, and for those listening out there, our next topic, what do we have coming up, Beth?
I believe we were going to focus on foster care next.
Foster care and substance use
mental
after
health.
that. And we want to thank Mr. John Fuqua and Beth Thomas for chatting with Cumberland. Thank you for being here, brother.
Thank you. Thanks
Thank
for having
you.
me.
And I hope we can do it again soon sometime. And in the meantime, tune in, turn up, and get lifted.
Lifted.